This week's cruise news has it all. Shocking announcements, some tragedy, long overdue upgrades, and some serious drama around taxes, the CDC, and other things. And a last-minute cancellation to a popular cruise port destination. So let's get right into it. First, let's talk about Carnival's innovation itinerary. New ships, bigger water parks, and a whole new direction. What if I told you Carnival is ditching one of its most new and iconic attractions and building a new ship so massive it can carry nearly 8,000 people? Now, this isn't just your standard ship announcement. We've had a lot of these in the recent months even. This is Carnival's biggest flex in years. Carnival's innovation itinerary is the boldest vision that we've seen from this cruise line in over a decade. They're trying to compete, obviously, with Royal Caribbean, and MSC just rolled out World America. So Carnival's stepping up the game. And this isn't just about bigger and shinier new ships. No, this is a multi-year plan to completely reshape Carnival's entire brand. And they're pulling out all the stops. Now, the star of the show is Carnival Festival, which is set to debut in 2027 out of Port Canaveral. This is the 4th Excel class ship, joining Mardi Gras, Celebration, and Jubilee, which I just got home from, but with some game-changing differences. Now, they made waves with the first roller coaster at sea, which is Bolt, and I kind of like it, but it's expensive for what it's worth, so they're scrapping that. So there's no Bolt roller coaster. Instead, Carnival is going all in on a massive 3-deck water park called Waterworks Ultra. And my 12-year-old is obsessed with water parks, so I know she's gonna be super excited about this. It'll have 6 slides, including 2 brand new family raft slides, a ropes course, splash zones, a dry toddler play area, which is important because if you cruise with littles, you know that oftentimes the water parks and pools are off limits unless the kids are potty trained. And nighttime water park events. That's right, Carnival is launching some after dark splash parties. Now inside, the ship introduces 2 music-themed immersive zones. One that's gonna use interactive lighting, sound, and even the music creation process, whatever that means, as part of the process and part of the entertainment. So think of this as an audio-visual playground. Now, what exactly this is gonna look like, I'm not sure. Festival also features a whopping 1,000 interconnecting rooms. Hopefully they don't continue to shrink them like they have on these Excel class ships. And they're introducing a new Turtles program for babies as young as 6 months. Now, Carnival also at the same time has revealed the 5th Excel class ship, Carnival Tropical, which is expected to arrive in 2028. But then, after that, the mega ship era of cruising hits full throttle. Carnival is working with a famous Italian shipbuilder to build 3 ships over 230,000 gross tons starting in 2029. Now, these are what they're calling Project Ace, and these Project Ace ships are going to carry almost 8,000 passengers, making them the largest in the entire Carnival Corporation fleet. Plus, Carnival's reworking their Mahogany Bay into Isla Tropical to match the Tropical ship name. I just got back from Mahogany Bay. It's in Roatan, Honduras. It's a really great cruise port already, but Carnival plans to add to it a swim-up bar and a beach club, so that should be pretty exciting. Now, another big change is they're going to expand their Half Moon Key. They're rebranding it Relax Away at Half Moon Key, but that doesn't rhyme, so I guess we're gonna now start mispronouncing Key as K, kind of like Royal Caribbean's Perfect Day at Coco Cay. But anyway, they're gonna expand Relax Away at Half Moon Cay with new Excel size docks. Now, if you're a fan of Carnival Cruise Line, including Carnival, Holland, and Princess, you're probably familiar with Half Moon Cay. It's one of my favorite private island destinations, but I hate the fact that it's a tender port. So the addition of docks is huge news. That makes me really excited. Now, of course, they're also opening a new private destination, Celebration Key, actually spelled K-E-Y, this summer. So Carnival's got a lot going on. And add into that a loyalty program overhaul coming in 2026, and I hope that's good because usually Carnival's loyalty overhauls are not good. But let's just look on the positive side. Let's say it's going to be good. But either way, Carnival isn't just staying competitive, but they're aiming to be the leaders in the cruise line industry. So I want to know, what do you think about these things? Is Carnival hitting the right notes, or is bigger not always better? What do you think about the revamping of the VIFP loyalty program? For me, as a platinum member, it makes me a little anxious because again, Carnival's overhauls aren't usually good for these higher tier status members, but we'll see. But I want to know what you think. Let me know down in the comments. Now, shifting gears, we have a tragic story. And I know I sound like I'm beating a dead horse here because I talk about this almost every week, but every week there's just a story about this. And by the way, I did just get home from Jubilee. I brought home the flu for the 2nd time in my last 3 cruises. So this is seriously a thing. You gotta have cruise insurance. But I'm gonna share with you a cautionary tale that really underscores why it's really important. So in this case, it was a gift from their son. It was a once-in-a-lifetime cruise that a son gave to his parents to celebrate 50 years of marriage. But 3 days into the cruise, a devastating emergency left a family with heartbreak. And not just that, a crushing financial burden that no one saw coming. So what happened is this. Glenn and Beverly Stein, they're a couple from Australia. They boarded Carnival Luminosa on March 30th for a short 4-night cruise to the Whitsundays. Now, this was their first ever cruise. And again, it was a gift from their children. Now, according to their daughter-in-law, they were super excited. But just as the ship began its return journey, Glenn suffered a serious medical emergency. And despite the onboard medical team's best efforts, his condition rapidly deteriorated. And this is not uncommon. I've personally been on a lot of cruises where there have been medical emergencies on board. On 3 different cruises, we've actually had diversions, and on 2 of those cases, the passenger actually died. Now, unfortunately, this was pretty emergent. This man was airlifted, medevaced by helicopter, where he sadly passed away. And now his wife is facing a financial disaster. Now, I talked a lot about the cost of emergency evacuations. If you have to be medevaced from a cruise ship, it's gonna cost you a lot of money. And in this case, she's facing medevac expenses, hospital care, onboard care, funeral expenses, and transporting her husband's body home. And this is estimated to cost tens of thousands of dollars. Now, even with travel insurance, this would be an incredibly painful story and very tragic, of course. But in this case, the couple did not have travel insurance. So now the financial burden falls entirely on this man's wife. But this is a heartbreaking but important reminder. Travel insurance is not optional. I don't care how young you are, how healthy you are, medical evacuations can happen to anyone. And they can easily cost $30,000 to $50,000, if not more, and that's not including other costs tied to international medical care or repatriation. And a lot of times people assume I have good health insurance at home, it's gonna cover me. That's usually not the case. Now, I have a free travel insurance guide. I link it down in the comments because it does get confusing. So I did a lot of research over several years. I've carried annual travel insurance for my cruises and land travel for about 5 years. And in my guide, I break down what policies to consider, what makes most sense for you, if it's a one-off policy or an annual plan like I do. But whatever you decide to go with, don't cruise without travel insurance. Seriously. Up next is some breaking news that actually just happened. And it again relates to Royal Caribbean's Labadee. Labadee in Haiti, it's supposed to be a safe, secluded getaway. So Labadee, I always say it's a private island because that's how Royal Caribbean markets it. But every time I do, people like to snipe and say it's not an island. Okay, technically it's a private peninsula. But regardless, once again, sadly, Royal Caribbean is canceling calls to this private destination. And the reason is a stark reminder of the instability that happens just outside its walls. Now, I'm a big fan of Labadee. I love visiting there. I've only been once and I absolutely loved it and I hope to get back. But Royal Caribbean last year for several months canceled planned visits to this port because of rising security concerns in the region. Now, when you visit here, of course, it's secure. There's lots of security. It's only for Royal Caribbean cruise passengers. So cruisers tend to be insulated from any of the instability happening outside of those kind of armed gates. But Royal Caribbean has made the decision that it's just a little too unsafe again, so they're canceling calls here. Ships including Voyager of the Seas and Oasis of the Seas were the first to reroute, informing passengers just in the past few days with letters and captain's announcements. Now, instead of docking at Labadee, Voyager will instead head to Puerto Plata, a very solid port. I love it. It's in the Dominican Republic, not very far from Labadee. And Oasis is navigating now, rerouting to Nassau. I know everybody hates Nassau, but I love it. While Labadee itself is pretty far from Haiti's capital, and again is guarded by secure forces and fences, escalating gang violence across the country, including some military-style ambushes, has made even these isolated and secure locations a growing concern. So out of an abundance of caution, Royal Caribbean has decided not to visit there and not to call on this port. They're not taking any chances, and I think it's a good call. And as I mentioned, this isn't the first time visits have been paused here. It was just last year that Royal Caribbean canceled all Labadee stops from March to October of 2024, and their sister company, Celebrity, also has halted visits in the last month. So I'm curious if Labadee is eventually going to be dropped from itineraries altogether. Royal Caribbean has spent a lot of money developing this private paradise, But if they have to keep canceling and rerouting and issuing refunds and onboard credit to folks, at what point does it not become worth it? And are they going to just drop it, sell the land, and move on? So I want to know what you think. For now, the situation remains tense and evolving. Nobody knows what's going to happen, if Royal Caribbean's going to return there at all, and if they do, when. But I'm curious what you think about this cruise port destination, if you've ever been or if you ever plan to go. Speaking of private islands, we also have some news from Norwegian. If you've ever had your cruise call to Norwegian's private island canceled due to bad weather, you're not alone. It's been a big issue. It's kind of like Costa Maya, which is nicknamed Costa Maybe, which is canceled often because of high winds and the difficulty that ships have in safely docking. Now, in Norwegian's case, their private island, this is a common occurrence where high winds prevent ships from docking, and last minute they have to cancel this port of call or reroute it. So cruisers who love Norwegian will be happy to hear that Great Stirrup is finally getting a desperately needed upgrade. It's a $150 million pier that will allow 2 large ships to dock directly. No more tendering. Again, I hate tendering. It's so tedious and it just takes up so much time on a short port day. So you no longer have to expect canceled visits or uncertainty due to rough seas and high winds. No more disappointment, hopefully. Now, this is a long time coming. Norwegian was actually the first cruise line to start the whole private island trend all the way back in 1977, before I was born. That's a long time ago. But unlike Royal Caribbean's Perfect Day at Coco Cay or Carnival's newly upcoming Celebration Key, it has lagged behind in major amenities. But that's all about to change. Norwegian realizes they need to compete. The other cruise lines are stepping it up with the private islands. It's not good enough just to have a beautiful beach. You got to have more stuff too. So alongside the new pier, the island is going to feature a 28,000 square foot heated pool, 2 swim-up bars, splash pad, poolside cabanas, and even a tram system to easily get around. So if you've ever skipped Norwegian, partly because of the risk of missing this port, I want to know, are these upgrades going to change your mind? Have you visited here? Is it worth it? Let me know what you think in the comments. Another day, another tax controversy in cruise world. Cruising to Hawaii could soon get a lot more expensive thanks to a new tax plan that cruise lines are calling unconstitutional. And yes, lawsuits are already being discussed. Hawaii lawmakers have proposed 2 controversial bills. One would charge a $20 per person per port fee. That could add up pretty quickly for a family of 4, for example. And the other would apply an 11% tax to cruise cabins, treating them like hotel rooms. If both of these pass, it could effectively double the cost of cruising the Hawaiian Islands for families. Norwegian, which operates the only US flagged ship, Pride of America, that sails Hawaii year-round, said that they're prepared to challenge this in court. Their general counsel was very blunt about it, saying that it's unconstitutional because ships are not hotels. Now, lawmakers argue that cruise ships need to pay their fair share, just like hotels do. But Norwegian counters that maritime law doesn't allow these types of fees beyond standard port services. Norwegian says cruise guests already pay about $100 in taxes and fees on a typical Hawaii cruise. And this plan could push that to $200 to $250 or even more, making Hawaii unaffordable for many families. And cruise lines are already warning that they may pull out of Hawaii altogether. Their general counsel was kind of snarky, being quoted as saying, "Our ships have propellers. We can move them anywhere." So I want to know, what do you think about Hawaii's right to ask for more money? Is this a good thing to protect the local environment and the economy, or is it going to hurt tourism? And this proposed tax is going over just about as well as another well-known cruise tax, which is in Mexico. So let me give you a little update about that. Remember a few months ago, I reported a $42 per person tax that blindsided cruisers in the cruise industry last year. Well, we finally have an update, and it might not all be bad news. Mexico's proposed cruise tax, it's still set to take effect July 1st. Originally, the date was earlier, but there was a lot of pushback, and the Mexican government pushed it back to July 1st. But Carnival CEO says negotiations with the Mexican government are making progress. He recently met with the governor of Quintana Roo, which is where a lot of the major cruise port destinations are located, like Cozumel and Costa Maya. So he met with leaders there, and while there's no official deal in place just yet, he's hopeful. Weinstein emphasized that the cruise industry was not consulted before this policy was announced, and now everyone is rushing around and scrambling to try to fix it and adapt. The Florida Caribbean Cruise Association has warned that the new tax could make Mexico more than 200% more expensive than the average Caribbean port, leading to obviously fewer ship calls. Now, the industry wants collaboration, not drama. As Weinstein put it, if we had just talked first, we wouldn't be in this situation. So a compromise may be coming, but for now, we wait. And I know a lot of cruisers like me have cruises already booked well into the year past July 1st, with calls to Mexico. So I want to know what you think about this $42 tax per person and if it's going to affect whether or not you decide to book itineraries that call in Mexico. Is it a deterrent? Are you going to look at other itineraries, or is it no big deal? Next, a familiar story. Norovirus. It's everywhere. Every week I tell you about some raging nasty norovirus outbreak. And as I mentioned, I just got home from Carnival Jubilee with flu A, the second time in my last 3 cruises I came home sick. But I think I'll take the flu over norovirus, which is a whole bunch of puking and pooping. But anyway, norovirus has had a huge surge, especially with Florida cruise ships. And this is unfortunate timing because it happens to coincide with a controversial move that not a lot of people saw coming. This kind of was a blindside from the CDC. And what that was is the CDC all of a sudden just laid off their entire outbreak response team. Every full-time employee in the CDC's vessel sanitation program is now gone, including their lead epidemiologist. Now, this program was responsible for monitoring and managing onboard illnesses like these norovirus outbreaks that had been rampant this year. And this news broke just as Seaburn Encore docked in Miami with yet another rampant norovirus outbreak affecting 35 passengers and crew. And as I mentioned, this is not an isolated case. I've reported on this pretty frequently. There have already been 12 outbreaks on ships just this year, 10 of them involving ships that either departed from or docked in Florida. Meanwhile, wastewater testing in Florida shows historically high levels of norovirus, especially in these cruise-heavy regions like Orlando, Port Canaveral, and Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. The CDC says the work will now be handled by the U.S. Public Health Service officers, but there's concern about capacity and experience. Reportedly, only 1 epidemiologist remains, and they're still in training. So it feels like a really risky time to downsize on staff. But I want to know what you think. Is the CDC even effective? Does it matter? Or is it going to affect your thoughts about how you cruise and the risks you're willing to take with your health? Next, Royal Caribbean doubles down on casino space and moves their loyalty lounge to make room. A major shift is happening on board Royal Caribbean ships, one that could spark, let's just say, mixed reactions. On Utopia of the Seas, Royal Caribbean is dramatically expanding its non-smoking casino by combining multiple venues into one large space. That means they're eliminating the Attic Comedy Club and relocating the Crown Lounge up to Deck 16. Now, this move reflects just how popular onboard casinos have become. Not surprisingly, because a lot of us have figured out how to hack the casino cruise system to cruise for free. I have a whole video about it. I'll drop it down in the comments if you want to watch it and learn how to cruise free. That's how I cruise monthly. Well, I cruise free. I invest in the casino to get free cruises. But cruise gambling has become wildly popular as people have started to figure this out, including on the shorter sailings. Now, on a recent sailing of Utopia, guests reported that every slot machine was full for hours every evening. So casino players get frustrated when obviously you can't get on a machine, and it makes for a bad experience. So the Crown Lounge relocation will give higher tier Crown and Anchor guests, that's Royal Caribbean's loyalty program, a more private space. But some cruisers that are loyal to Royal, they're not thrilled about losing the attic or seeing casino space prioritized. Royal is reportedly planning the same upgrade on Wonder of the Seas later this year. And depending on cruiser feedback, more Oasis-class ships could follow. So I want to know, would you trade your favorite non-casino venue for more casino space? Or should the casino people just take what they've got and leave the other stuff alone? As a casino player, I always want more casino space, but I want to know what you think. And I know this can be a hot button issue, so be nice in the comments. Up next is a hot topic. The recession worries. Tariffs, inflation, market dips. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's thinking and worrying about it. But what does this mean for the cruise industry? Now, I've reported a lot about how cruise demand is wildly soaring. As a travel agent, and I'll drop info below on how you can become a travel agent. I do it just to book my own travel because I am an actual university professor who is a travel agent. Travel agents, we know that bookings are full. Ships are sailing at capacity through the rest of this year. So we've seen huge demand in cruising. But it stands to reason that all this economic volatility is going to affect that cruise demand. But the CEOs of the biggest cruise lines, they say, well, we're not so worried. Well, of course they're gonna say that. At the Seatrade Cruise Global Panel, Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and MSC leaders all address the economic uncertainty. And they're staying optimistic, at least to the public. Carnival's Josh Weinstein admitted that bookings slowed a little earlier this year, but bounced back quickly. Royal Caribbean's Jason Liberty was more direct. He said, the noise doesn't change our ambition. Well, that's a bunch of nonsense talk. But he pointed to ongoing ship orders and long-term plans for net zero emissions by the company by 2050 as an indication that they're not going to stop investing in cruising and they expect demand to continue to grow. Now, in short, the cruise industry, they're not hitting the brakes, and they're betting that value-conscious cruisers will still turn to cruising even during uncertain times. And traditionally, cruising has proven to be a really cost-effective way to travel. So during uncertain times, a lot of people have turned to cruising to travel more affordably. But with the changes in the cruise industry lately, and by that I mean a lot of cutbacks, nickel and diming, escalating prices that have coincided with the escalation in demand, that pendulum is starting to shift a little bit. So I want to know, are they right? Is cruise demand not going to be as effective because it's still the value vacation? Or are all the cutbacks, nickel and diming, going to come back and bite these cruise lines in the butt, and they're going to face some economic uncertainty and decline along with the general economic turmoil? Thank you for tuning into this week's cruise news. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I want to know what you think. And as always, visit my website, profmelissa.com, for free port guides, all my recommendations, and everything else. I'll see you next week. Happy cruising.